Hi guys, we have been seeing about the periodic properties. In that series, we have seen about atomic radii, ionic radii, ionization enthalpy, and electron gain enthalpy. In that series, we are going to see a new more periodic property which is called as electronegativity. Electronegativity is a qualitative measure of the ability of an atom in a molecule to attract the shared pair of electrons towards itself. For example, see this bonding between hydrogen atoms. This is an hydrogen atom and this is again another hydrogen atom. They are sharing electrons as they are forming covalent bond. So we represent this as H bond H. Each hydrogen is contributing one electron and they have equal possession on the electron. Same way, look at here. This is a bonding between chlorine and another chlorine atom. They both share one electron in their valence shell. So we represent that as Cl bond Cl, and each chlorine has position on the each of the electron. So when you try to break this bond, each chlorine will go away with one electron. See, Cl dot Cl dot, each chlorine is taking away one electron, and same way if you break this, each hydrogen will go away with one electron. But look at this molecule where a hydrogen bonds with a chlorine by sharing electron. When a bond is formed by sharing electrons, we call that type of bond as covalent bond. You will be learning about these types of bonds in the next chapter. So now here actually both the atoms are sharing electron. Hydrogen is giving one electron from its valence shell, and chlorine is also giving one electron from its valence shell, and both are actually sharing it. So the reason why they are sharing that, so that chlorine could have 8 electrons in its valence shell and hydrogen can have 2, which we call as doublet, and this as octet. Now even though both have shared the electrons, chlorine has more tendency to attract both the shared pair of electrons towards itself, and this is called as electronegativity. So now we say chlorine is more electronegative than hydrogen. So what is electronegativity? The ability of an atom in a molecule to attract the shared pair of electrons towards itself. That is called as electronegativity. So when you try to break this bond, chlorine will take away both the electrons and hydrogen goes with a positive charge. So we say chlorine is more electronegative. When we learned about ionization enthalpy and electron gain enthalpy, both of them were a measurable quantity. We expressed them in kilojoule mole inverse. But electronegativity is not a measurable quantity. But we have a number of numerical scales of electronegativity of elements like Pauling scale, Mulliken-Jaffe scale, Alfred-Rokov scale. All this have been developed to express electronegativity of the elements. Of all these scales, Pauling scale is widely used. He was an American scientist, Linus Pauling. In the year 1922, he assigned arbitrarily a value of 4.0 to fluorine, which means he assumed the value of electronegativity for fluorine to be 4.0 because fluorine is considered to be the most electronegative element in the periodic table. It has the greatest ability to attract electrons. So he gave an arbitrary value of 4.0 to fluorine. Based on this fluorine's value, approximate values of electronegativity of a few other elements were given. So you have a table in your textbook, you can refer that. The electronegativity of any given element is not a constant. Actually, it varies depending upon the element to which it is bound. So if chlorine is bound to hydrogen, we have electronegativity value for chlorine, but when this chlorine is bonded to some other atom, then the electronegativity changes. Though it is not a measurable quantity, it provides a means of predicting the nature of force that holds a pair of atoms together, which we will be learning later. So electronegativity, even though we are not able to measure it, but using that approximate values, you can talk about the nature of bonding between two atoms in a molecule. Electronegativity, when you look at the trends, like how we saw atomic radii across the period, it decreases, down the group it increases. Electronegativity generally increases along a period and decreases down a group. When we say increases along a period, for example, from lithium to fluorine, electronegativity increases. From down the group, if you take the examples of halogens, from fluorine to astatine, it decreases. So electronegativity generally increases across a period and decreases down a group. We can explain this trend by taking the atomic radius into consideration. As you move along a period, atomic radii decreases. So the tendency to hold the electron increases. So electronegativity increases. Because what is electronegativity? The tendency to attract the electrons in a molecule. Knowing this relationship between atomic radius and electronegativity, we can explain the relationship between electronegativity and non-metallic properties, which we will be doing after some time when we talk about the chemical properties. So remember, electronegativity along a period it increases, down the group it decreases. As we are learning about the periodicity in properties, we are going to learn one more property, which is the valence of electrons, which means the valency. We are going to see the periodicity in the valency exhibited by the elements. It has been observed that the chemical properties of the elements depend upon the number of electrons present in the outermost shell of the atom. So the electrons present in the outermost shell of an atom are called valence electrons, and the number of these valence electrons determine the valence, or we call as valency, of the atom. It is because of this reason that the outermost shell is also called the valence shell of the atom, and the orbitals present in the valence shell is called the valence orbitals. So the number of electrons present in the valence shell, which means the outermost shell, they determine the valency of the atom, and which in turn determines the chemical properties. So now let's see all these elements in the periodic table blockwise, and what are their valencies. See, I've told you S and P block elements are together called as representative elements. D block elements are called as transition elements, and F block elements are called as inner transition elements. So in the case of representative elements, the valency of an atom is generally equal to either the number of valence electrons, which means the number of electrons in the outermost shell, or equal to 8 minus the number of valence electrons. I'll show you that with an example. So for representative elements, what is the valency? The valency of a particular element, which means an atom, will be equal to the number of valence electrons, or 8 minus the number of valence electrons. That will be the valency of representative elements, which mean S and P block elements. And in the case of transition and inner transition elements, they exhibit variable valency, which means for example, if you take iron can exhibit two valencies, Fe2 plus and Fe3 plus. This is because in the case of transition and inner transition elements, not only valence electrons but D or F electrons will also get involved in the chemical reaction. So these transition and inner transition elements exhibit variable valency. So when you are taking a valency, remember it is also called as oxidation states. Nowadays we prefer using the term oxidation state instead of valency. So when you take this valency and see its trend along the period and the group, along the period valency keeps on increasing. So it increases from 1 to 8. As I told you, the valency will be equal to the number of electrons in the outermost shell, or 8 minus the number of electrons in the valence shell. So it goes on increasing along the period. When you go down the group, the number of valence electrons remain the same. So all the elements in a group exhibit the same valency. For example, if you take group 1, what elements are present there? Alkali metals. And from lithium to francium you have, and all these elements of group 1 have valency 1, because all these elements have 1 electron in their valence shell. Now if you see the elements of group 2, where we have from beryllium, all these elements have 2 electrons in their outermost shell, so they exhibit a valency of 2. So variation of valency in a group, it remains the same because all the elements in a given group have the same number of valence electrons. See, this is what I told you for representative elements, which means S block and P block elements. Which group belong to S block 1 and 2, and from 13 to 18 they belong to P block. So together they are called as representative elements. I told you their valency will be equal to the number of valence electrons or 8 minus the number of valence electrons. Now see, for group 1, number of valence electron is 1, valence is also 1. Valence or valency both are same. And for group 2, the number of valence electrons, which means the number of electron in the outermost shell is 2, so the valence is also 2. And for group number 13, the number of valence electron is 3, so valency is 3. For 14, 4, valency is also 4. In the case of group 15, the valency number of valence electrons are 5, so valency is also 5, and they also exhibit 8 minus 5. What will be 8 minus 5? 3. So they exhibit both the valency 3 and 5. Same way in the case of 16th group, we have 6 valence electrons, so they exhibit the valency of 6, and they also exhibit 8 minus 6, which gives you 2. Same way 1, 7, and here 0, 8. And the noble gases present in group 18 are 0 valent. That is, their valency is 0 since these elements are chemically inert. Now let's take the example of hydrides formed by the elements of these groups to understand this valency. See, in group 1 we have lithium. Lithium can form LiH because it exhibits a valency of 1. So it can bond with 1 hydrogen. Same way, look here in the group 2, I've taken the example of calcium. Calcium can exhibit a valency of 2. So it can bond with 2 hydrogens. So it forms CaH2. And here valency is 3. So it forms the compound AlH3, as aluminium belongs to the 13th group. Carbon, which belongs to the 14th group, can exhibit a valency of 4. So it forms CH4. And here in the 15th group, we can take the example of nitrogen, and it exhibits a valency of 3. So it forms NH3. Same way, if you take 16th group, oxygen is present in 16th group, and it can exhibit a valency of 2, so it is joining with 2 hydrogens, so you are getting H2O. Here valency is 1, so HF. So these are the examples of hydrides of these elements to show the valency exhibited by each of these elements. As I told you, nowadays the term oxidation state is frequently used for valence. Now let's take an example to understand this oxidation state. Consider 2 oxygen containing compounds. See, I am taking 2 examples, OF2, Na2O. In both the compounds we have oxygen. Here fluorine is bonded with oxygen. Here sodium is bonded with oxygen. The order of the electronegativity of these 3 elements. What are the 3 elements present in both the compounds? We have oxygen, fluorine and sodium. And their order of electronegativity is fluorine is more electronegative than oxygen, which is more electronegative than sodium. So let's take the example of OF2 first. Here fluorine is bonded with oxygen. Compared to oxygen, fluorine is more electronegative. Fluorine belongs to the 17th group, so it can exhibit a valency of 1, and oxygen belongs to 16th group, so it can exhibit a valency of 2. So fluorine shares 1 electron with oxygen, but oxygen can take 2 electrons, so 2 fluorines share 1 electron each with oxygen to form this OF2. Whereas oxygen shares 2 electrons with each of the fluorine. So since fluorine is more electronegative and fluorine is sharing 1 electron, it is assigned an oxidation state of -1. Whereas oxygen, which can share 2 electrons, and since it is being less electronegative than fluorine, it is assigned an oxidation state of +2. So in OF2, the oxidation state of oxygen is +2. Now coming to this example, Na2O. Here which is more electronegative? Oxygen is more electronegative. So oxygen being more electronegative accepts 2 electrons, one from each of the 2 sodium atoms. and so oxygen is assigned an oxidation state -2. On the other hand, sodium with the electronic configuration 3s1 in the valence shell loses one electron to oxygen, so it is given an oxidation state +1. So the oxidation state of oxygen in Na2O is -2, because as I told you, oxygen being more electronegative accepts 2 electrons from each of the sodium, so it is assigned -2. So same oxygen in this compound, it is assigned an oxidation state of +2. Here it is assigned an oxidation state of -2. So you can define that the oxidation state of an element in a particular compound as the charge acquired by its atom on the basis of electronegative consideration from other atoms in the molecule. So based on the other atom in the molecule, here in the case of fluorine, here we considered sodium. So depending upon the electronegative consideration from other atoms in the molecule, the charge assigned to an atom is called as oxidation state. So this is about representative elements. In the case of transition and inner transition elements, as I told you, these elements exhibit variable valency. So we will be learning about this transition and inner transition elements in higher classes. So, so far we have seen how these periodic properties change along a period and down the group. So before we summarize all that and relate it to the chemical properties of the elements, let's see the anomalous behavior of second period elements. Because whenever you take a group, all the elements in the group are expected to behave similarly. But the elements in the second period, they show some different characteristics. Let's learn about that now. The first element in the groups 1, 2 and 13 to 17 differ in many aspects from the other members of their respective group. We call this as anomalous properties of second period elements. Anomalous means showing deviation or behaving differently. So when you take group 1, what are the elements we have? Lithium, sodium, potassium, rubidium, cesium, francium. We have elements in group 1. And in group 2 we have beryllium, magnesium, calcium, strontium, and it goes on. So the first element in these groups 1, 2, 13, and I've written till 13. So first elements of this group, they differ from the other elements in the group. So in the first group, lithium behaves differently. In the second group, beryllium behaves differently from the rest of the members in the family. And in 13th group, boron behaves differently. All the members in the first group, they form ionic compounds, but lithium, it prefers to form covalent compound. Same way in this group, all the members in the family, they prefer to form ionic compounds, but beryllium, like lithium, it forms covalent compounds. In fact, the behavior of lithium and beryllium is more similar with the second element of the following group, which means lithium behaves like magnesium, beryllium behaves like aluminium. So they resemble the second element of the following group. So the following group of lithium is second group, so it behaves like the second element magnesium, and same way beryllium behaves like the second element in the following group, which is aluminium. We call this sort of similarity as diagonal relationship in the periodic properties. See, lithium resembles magnesium, beryllium resembles aluminium, and we call this as what? The diagonal relationship in the periodic properties. So what are the reasons for the different chemical behavior of the first element of a group of element, especially in the S and P block elements than the other in the family, which means the first element, why it is behaving differently from the rest of the family members. This anomalous behavior is mainly due to the small size, the large charge by radius ratio, and high electronegativity of the element. So when you take the first element, it usually has a small size and their charge by radius ratio. Their atomic radius and their nuclear charge ratio will be very large compared to the rest of the members in the group, and they are highly electronegative compared to the rest of the members in the group. So these are the main reasons why the first member in the group behaves differently. And another reason for their anomalous behavior is that they have only 4 valence orbitals, which means in their outermost shell, if you take lithium, beryllium and boron, for lithium it is 2, 1 electronic configuration, 2, 2 it is 2, 3. So what is the valence shell? It is L shell. In L shell, what are the orbitals we have? 2s and 2p. So all the first members, they have only 2 valence subshells, which means they have 4 valence orbitals, 2s and 2p. 2p we have 2px, 2py and 2pz. So totally 4. So they can exhibit a covalency of 4. But the other elements in the period, they have M shell. So they can have 3s, 3p, 3d. So they can extend their covalency to higher number. But the first member can exhibit only a covalency of 4. So these are all the reasons why the first element in the group of 1, 2 and 13 to 17, they behave differently. See, I told you the first member of the group can have a covalency of 4, which means the maximum covalency is 4. So boron can only form Ba4 minus. But the other members of the groups can expand their valence shell to accommodate more than 4 pairs of electrons. For example, aluminium, it can form AlF6 because it has 3s, 3p, 3d in the valence shell. So it can expand its covalency. And moreover, if you take the p block elements, the first member, it shows a greater ability to form px, pz multiple bonds to itself. It can have p pi bonding, which you will be learning in the next chapter. So it can bond to itself. See, C double bond C, C triple bond C, N double bond N, N triple bond N. We call this as p pi multiple bonds. It can be px, py or these first group elements, which means the first member of each group, they can show this ability to form multiple bonds. So they can bond to itself and also to the second period elements. See here, carbon and nitrogen, they are the first member, and oxygen is in the second period. So carbon can bond with oxygen. See, C double bond O, C double bond N, C triple bond N and N double bond O. So they can form multiple bonds with themselves and also with the next element also. But the other members in the same group, they don't show such p pi multiple bonds like the first member. So far we have seen a lot of periodic trends about the different periodic properties. And now let's see what is the connection between these periodic trends and the chemical reactivity. So before seeing this connection between the periodic trends and the chemical reactivity, let's summarize the trends in the periodic properties that we have learned so far. So consider this as a periodic table. So when you look at this periodic table, we have S block elements here, transition D block elements here, P block and the F block here. So we call these D block as transition elements, F block as inner transition elements, and P and S block as together representative elements. And in the end we have noble gases. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 18 groups and 7 periods. 1, 2, 3, 4. So these are each row is a period and each column is a group. So along the period, atomic radius decreases, ionization enthalpy increases, electron gain enthalpy becomes more negative and electronegativity increases. So as you move along the period, you can see this trend. As you move down the group, see atomic radius increases, ionization enthalpy decreases, and what else? The electron gain enthalpy becomes less negative. So now let's relate this trends to the chemical reactivity or the properties of these elements. Look at the ionization enthalpy and the electron gain enthalpy on the extreme ends. Let's call this as the extreme left and this as the extreme right. The ionization enthalpy of the extreme left element in a period is the least, and the electron gain enthalpy of the extreme right element is the highest. So understand this. Ionization enthalpy increases, which means this side ionization enthalpy is the least. Here electron gain enthalpy becomes more negative, which means at this end it is more negative compared to this side. So when we say ionization enthalpy is the least here, which means it is easy to remove an electron. So the elements at this extreme left are ready to lose electron. Here when we say electron gain enthalpy is more negative, which means the elements at this end are willing to accept electron. So the extreme left elements, they have more tendency to lose electron, and the elements at the extreme right, as we are talking about the halogens, not the noble gases, they have more tendency to accept electron. So this results in the maximum chemical reactivity at the extreme left and at the extreme right. And at extreme left it is due to the loss of an electron leading to the formation of a cation, and at the extreme right, which means among halogens, it is shown by the gain of an electron forming an anion. So in both the ends the chemical reactivity is more, and this property of losing and gaining electron is actually related with the reducing and oxidizing behavior of the elements, and which you will be learning later in redox reactions lesson. So we will directly relate this properties to the metallic and non-metallic character of elements. So the metallic character of an element, which is highest at the extreme left, decreases as you move from left to right of the period, and the non-metallic character increases while you move from left to right. So we have metals here and non-metals here. So they have the tendency to lose electron and they have the tendency to gain electrons. So we relate this to electronegativity. What is electronegativity? The tendency to attract electrons in a chemical bond. So here we say the elements here are more electronegative, and here we call them as more electropositive. So we have understood certain periodic properties and how they show periodicity in a periodic table, which means the trend in the period and the group, and how this periodicity is related to electronic configuration. And we all know chemical and physical properties are also related to the electronic configuration of elements. So let's summarize what we have learned. See, I've told you high chemical reactivity at the two ends of the periodic table. Extreme left we have alkali metals, and they have more chemical reactivity because of their tendency to lose electrons. And at extreme right, where we talk about halogens, they have high chemical reactivity due to their ability to gain electrons. And we have non-metals at this extreme right, and we have metals on the extreme left. And you can understand the chemical reactivity of an element by its reactions with oxygen and halogens, especially oxygen. So now let's see how these elements react with oxygen to understand their chemical reactivity. When the alkali metals, when they react with oxygen, they form oxides. For example, sodium is present in the extreme left. So when it reacts with oxygen, it gives you Na2O. And that oxide is basic in nature. And coming to the extreme right, we take the example of chlorine. When it reacts with oxygen, it gives you Cl2O7, and that oxide is acidic in nature. What is meant by basic and acidic? They show basic characteristics, and this shows acidic characteristics. You know how we prove that nature, whether one oxide is basic or acidic? Take that oxide, treat it with water. If it gives you a basic solution, then that oxide is basic oxide. If that oxide gives you a acidic solution, then that is a acidic oxide. So sodium hydroxide is giving you sodium hydroxide with water, which is basic. So we say Na2O is basic oxide. So in this extreme left, the metals, when they react with oxygen, they give basic oxides. These non-metals, when they react with oxygen, they give acidic oxides. Now coming to the elements in the center, oxides of elements in the center are amphoteric or neutral. Amphoteric means they behave as both acidic and also as basic, whereas neutral oxides, they have no acidic or basic properties. So we can take the example of aluminium. Aluminium, when reacts with oxygen, it gives you Al2O3, which is a amphoteric oxide, and carbon and nitrogen, when they react with oxygen, they give CO and NO, which are neutral oxides. What are amphoteric oxides? They show both the properties like basic and acidic, and neutral, they neither show acidic property nor basic property, they are neutral. So along a period, the metallic character decreases and non-metallic character increases. When you are talking about the transition metals, the change in atomic radii is much smaller as compared to those of representative elements along the period. Same way in inner transition elements, the change in atomic radii is still smaller. So the ionization enthalpies are intermediate between those of S and P block elements for transition and inner transition elements. So they are less electropositive than group 1 and 2 metals. Remember, I told you in this extreme left, we call them as more electropositive because they have tendency to lose electron, and extreme right, they are more electronegative because of their tendency to accept electron. So in the case of transition and inner transition, they are less electropositive than group 1 and group 2 metals. So now talking about the group, the increase in atomic and ionic radii with increase in atomic number results in gradual decrease in the ionization enthalpy. So as you move down the group, ionization enthalpy decreases. Therefore, the metallic character increases down the group and non-metallic character decreases. But there are exceptions. The trend that we are talking, they are the general trend, but there will be lot of exceptions. So as for now, down the group, metallic character increases and non-metallic character decreases. All the other fine details about this oxidizing and reducing property and the exceptions shown by these transition and inner transition elements, you will be learning in higher classes. And this is the end of this lesson, classification of elements and periodicity in properties. Thank you.